The director of The Bourne Identity, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and now one of the most memorable spy thrillers in recent memory. Name is Doug Liman, and the film is Fair Game, the real-life tale of exposed CIA operative Valerie Plame. Doug joins us from New York. Thank you so much for joining us, Doug.
Thanks for having me.
The most striking part of the movie for me was the scene where an Iraqi scientist that Valerie Plame had promised to, in a sense, secret out of Iraq on the eve of the Iraq War, slowly began to realize that help wasn't coming, and that's because Plame's cover had been blown in Washington, and all of her operations, many of which were covert and dedicated to extracting information from Iraqi scientists, were compromised. How close is that to the reality of what actually happened?
That's an actual real operation that was conducted by the Joint Task Force on Iraq. You have to remember that Valerie Plame was not only a covert operative, she was what's called a NOC, non-official cover. They're the most clandestine of the covert operatives. And when the Joint Task Force on Iraq was formed, Valerie was made head of its operations. And one of the critical operations that the JTFI conducted was an operation where they recruited a doctor from Cleveland, American, of Iraqi descent, and sent her back to Iraq to quote-unquote visit her brother, who was an Iraqi nuclear scientist. And that's a real operation that Valerie supervised, and the specific details of the operation had to be pieced together from other sources because Valerie had to sign a secrecy oath with the CIA, which she honors to this day.
Right.
But her words were that she recently was quoted saying that it didn't end well for those scientists.
How much did you talk with Valerie Plame and Joe Wilson in preparation for this film? How forthcoming were they?
Valerie and Joe were extremely forthcoming. Ooh, my earpiece popped out. Valerie and Joe were
no worries.
Yeah. Valerie and Joe were extremely forthcoming when it came to the sort of the personal impact of these events on their lives. I sort of, as a filmmaker approaching this story, it was kind of the opposite of what you normally have when you're dealing with a real life story, because Valerie and Joe were able to be extremely forthcoming about the intimate details of their marriage and the impact that this scandal had on them, and the scenes that took place in the Wilson household.
Yeah, you pull no punches showing that.
No, and it's probably I've obviously done a lot of spy stories with the Bourne franchise, with covert affairs, and I think the thing that's most interesting about spies is what happens when they go home. So with Fair Game, I was obviously able to explore a lot of just what separate from the scandal they were embroiled in, is just what is the toll it takes on a marriage and on friendships when the woman is a spy and can't tell her husband where she's going or when she'll be back, and he just needs to know whether or not they need childcare, or what kind of toll that takes on a friendship when you can't tell your best friend of 20 years what you actually do, and you've been lying to them for 20 years. They think you're an investment banker. Is that person still your best friend? So I obviously was very interested in the personal aspect of this story, and Valerie and Joe were very forthcoming. When it came to the nuts and bolts of the spy operation in the film, I had to really rely on journalists and other people in the CIA to come forward, because Valerie honors her secrecy oath to this day. And when it came to exploring the actions of the White House, because there was a trial and a conviction of Scooter Libby, he was convicted on 5 counts, so to have a convicted felon in the White House doesn't happen every day. I don't think it's happened since Watergate. We had an enormous trial transcript to draw from for that aspect of the story.
Let me ask you about that, because we are at a very unique time in Washington now, the largest leak ever of classified information is slowly playing out. Your movie is about, in many ways, the toll of keeping secrets and how secrets can be manipulated for political use, and literally matters of life and death are at stake. Do we need to rethink, do you think, in this country, the way that we keep and maintain secrets?
I think Fair Game is a cautionary tale about the abuse of power by the White House, and how invoking state secrecy can be used to abuse power, and so I do think we need to reevaluate it a little bit. And this is not something that's a Republican or Democratic issue. I have concerns with the Obama administration about some of the secrets that they're keeping some cases out of court, invoking state secrecy. And you see that Valerie Plame, the story of what happened to Valerie Plame is just one example of when a White House is allowed to abuse invoking state secrecy. They have enormous power, and in the case of Valerie Plame, they were able to set out and bring enormous might to destroy this husband and wife living in Georgetown for the sole fact that they spoke out against our government, which is crazy. In the country I grew up in, that I hold dear to my heart, you're allowed to criticize the government without them turning against you. And so I am following the WikiLeaks scandal with great interest.
Doug Liman, thank you so much for joining us. It's a fascinating and very thought-provoking and sometimes very scary film. Thank you so much.